Buenas tardes para todos. Es un gusto estar aquí presentes en una nueva tarde en este ciclo de charlas que hemos denominado OEA-UCU, Reflexiones sobre la democracia y el derecho interamericano. Para recapitular lo que nos ha traído esta semana y lo que nos queda para concluir en el día de mañana. Al comienzo, el día lunes, tuvimos la presentación de la OEA y como representante del Uruguay, el embajador Washington Abdala, que dio la apertura del ciclo, junto con Jean-Michel Arrigui, que nos habló del marco normativo del sistema interamericano. Al siguiente día, el día martes, tuvimos al aquí presente economista Luis Porto, que nos habló de la visión estratégica de la OEA y la interdependencia de los pilares de la democracia, derechos humanos, desarrollo y seguridad. Tuvimos la suerte de tenerlo aquí presente físicamente en la Universidad Católica del Uruguay. El día miércoles tuvimos a Francisco Guerrero, el secretario del Fortalecimiento de la Democracia, que nos habló sobre la democracia en el hemisferio. Y hoy en día vamos en la cuarta jornada. Voy a dejar a Claudia Barrientos para que nos haga la presentación de la expositora del día de hoy. Y ya para finalizar, el día de mañana tendremos a Mari Carmen Plata, secretaria de Acceso a Derechos y Equidad, que nos va a conversar sobre el acceso a derechos con equidad. Claudia, si te parece, te cedo a ti la palabra para que hagas la presentación correspondiente.
Perfecto, voy a hacer la presentación en español. La señora Kim Osborne lleva casi 2 décadas dedicada al desarrollo socioeconómico de América Latina y el Caribe, como pionera del programa de pequeñas empresas turísticas de la OEA, reconocido en el ámbito internacional como una práctica óptima. La señora Osborne se ha consagrado a ayudar a las pequeñas y medianas empresas de este sector a alcanzar la competitividad y rentabilidad, combinando normas reconocidas internacionalmente con productos de alto valor, campañas de comercialización dirigidas y creación de imagen comercial. Es coautora del Business Management and Operations Manual for Small Hotels y encabezó un programa de formación y desarrollo de capacidades en turismo en la región. Fue nombrada para fungir como representante de la OEA en Belice entre 2008 y 2011 y como tal se encargó de gestionar los programas y relaciones políticas de la OEA, al tiempo que puso en marcha diversas iniciativas relacionadas con medios de subsistencia sostenibles, desarrollo de capacidades institucionales, formación y certificación en turismo y empoderamiento de la mujer, entre otros. La señora Osborne es miembro fundadora del Center for Community Resource Development, una organización no gubernamental creada para ayudar a las comunidades más desfavorecidas a combatir la pobreza, promoviendo el desarrollo basado en el aprovechamiento de recursos comunitarios. En fechas más recientes, la señora Osborne ocupó el cargo de jefa de la sección de cooperación técnica de la Secretaría Ejecutiva para el Desarrollo Integral, la secretaría que actualmente dirige, pero en su anterior función supervisó los esquemas de cooperación solidaria para el desarrollo de la OEA. La señora Osborne también logró negociar y establecer, ha logrado negociar y establecer varios esquemas asociativos con organizaciones internacionales y regionales con la finalidad de promover la labor de la OEA en el continente. Ha sido galardonada en 3 ocasiones por su extraordinario desempeño como empleada de la OEA y en 2016 fue electa como presidenta de la Asociación de Personal. Antes de la OEA, la señora Osborne trabajó para la National Development Corporation de Dominica y diversas empresas del sector privado, tanto en Dominica como en las Antillas neerlandesas. Cuenta con una maestría en Administración Pública y una licenciatura en Gestión de Hotelería, Viajes y Turismo. So, this is Kim. Please go ahead with your presentation and thank you for being here.
Thank you so very much, Claudia. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Good afternoon, Luis. Good afternoon, Federico. Es un placer estar aquí con ustedes esta tarde, and I am going to present in English. I believe our students are excellent English speakers, or so Luis has told me. So my presentation will be in English. I think I'll spare all of you my Spanish this afternoon, but I'm very pleased to share with you. I'm going to share my screen so that we can begin. Okay, so As was mentioned so eloquently by Representative Barrientos, thank you so much, Claudia, for the introduction. I am the Executive Secretary for Integral Development. As you know, the OAS has 4 pillars: democracy, human rights, security, and development. I have the great honor under Secretary General Almagro's leadership to be spearheading the pillar on development. So I will outline the presentation that I will do today will focus on a few areas. Why integral development as a pillar of the OAS? That is something that usually comes up. What are the comparative advantages of the OAS in integral development? How do we work? And how did we adjust, or how have we adjusted our work to meet the COVID-19 crisis? And I believe that this will cover the essence of the work of the presentation today. So why integral development? Why does the OAS focus on the issue of integral development when, as you know, so often what the OAS is known for is democracy and human rights, and very little is known, if you will, about what the OAS does in the area of integral development. And so I had hoped for some interaction with the students, and I have put 2 questions, but they will be virtual questions, right? So what comes to mind when you think about integral development? And perhaps we can have a response later on. I will just pause for a little while. Just think of the issue of integral development, and the issue integral is what I will focus on, because our approach is very different from that of many organizations where we look at all of government, all of secretariat approach to the issues of development. And secondly, can there really be democracy, security, and respect for human rights without development? And just ponder those 2 questions as we go along, as we enter into the discussion later on. So let us look at the issue of development and why it is important. Why is it that we need to have this issue addressed in order for us to meet the other areas that the OAS aspires to? So at the base of it, I thought there's no better way to demonstrate this than to illustrate Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? At the very bottom, you have the physical needs, the need for shelter, warm food, and drink. And that is what development provides. And Maslow said, at the base of all fundamental to our existence is the need to satisfy those. So that the issue of development, as it is contemplated within the context of the OAS, treats with the issues of education, of economic development, and ensuring that people have jobs, so labor and employment, on ensuring that businesses are thriving, so that communities can be driven. So we have an integrated approach to this issue of development, which commensurates with meeting the basic needs of the people of our region. And as you go up, if that is met, then we're looking at the issues of peace and security, which is another one of the pillars of the OAS. And then you go up to your social needs, right? Building trust. If I am hungry, if I do not have a roof over my head, if I do not see that my kids can go to school and be educated, then the chances are, and fundamentally, if I'm not educated, then fundamentally, I'm not going to aspire to the higher level needs because I'm so busy trying to take care of my basic needs, right? So at the OAS, the idea of taking care of those very basic needs is what the issue of integral development is all about. So if we have the base of the pyramid taken care of, then that base underpins the other important areas of the work of the OAS: security, human rights, and democracy. If I am educated, if I have an educated workforce, if I have people who are employed and are satisfied with their basic needs, then they can aspire and recognize when their rights are being violated. They can make educated decisions with regard to democracy, et cetera, et cetera. So this issue of development, we believe it underpins very strongly, very fundamentally, the other higher level needs that we are aspiring to on that hierarchy of needs that Maslow so eloquently presented to us so many decades ago. So in terms of development, we have our mandate steeped in the OAS Charter. And that is sometimes very surprising to people, where member states, our founders, our member states thought, look, if we do not have that issue addressed, right? So the integral development of their peoples as conditions that are essential for peace and security. And that integral development encompasses the economic, social, education, cultural, scientific, and technological fields. All of this, again, what we try to do is not to have a siloed approach, but to have an integrated approach to addressing those issues so that they're mutually reinforcing each other as articulated in the OAS Charter. And that member states will give primary importance within their development plans for the encouragement of education, science, technology, and culture. And you don't usually see within one organization all of those issues being addressed. You have usually siloed, very specialized organizations that are treating with each of these issues. Whereas at the OAS, we're looking at this holistically. We're looking at this integration, if you will, of those issues as foundational, as I said before, for democracy, social justice, and progress. The charter goes on, as you will see, the peoples of the development have the Americas, have a right to development in the framework of solidarity, equity, peace, and freedom. So development within the context of the OAS is a right? So that we have to ensure that that fundamental right that we've been mandated to deliver is being delivered within the context of the organization for all the reasons that I have stated before. And that development be developed with equity. And that is something that we emphasize very strongly within the context of the idea of equity and of equality, right? So that everyone, regardless, as we've emphasized, and our Secretary General came in with this, the slogan of the OAS being more rights for more people, expanding access to rights, not just the other human rights that we so always eloquently speak of, but that right to development as being essential as well. So I would like to say that our founders were very visionary, that if you look at Article 32 or Chapter 7, of the OAS Charter, we were way ahead of the Sustainable Development Goals. And I'm just illustrating a little bit here as to this alignment with the OAS Charter written so many years ago and the 2015 Sustainable Development Goals, and where there is some fundamental alignments, right? The elimination of extreme poverty. This has become goal number 1. We were ahead in that regard because we recognize that as being so important. And in 2015, everybody else recognized this right of ending poverty. So I put this here, Article 34, fair wages, employment opportunities, acceptable working conditions. So these are aspired to, but we had our framers and our founders had already thought through so many of those things as critical to the growth of the region, to the competitiveness of the region, to the security and peace of the region. So what are the comparative advantages that we have at the OAS in terms of integral development? There are many. I won't go through all of them, but I will try to highlight a few. So how do we work? So the OAS, within the context of the Secretariat, there are 2 councils, co-equal bodies, operational bodies. The Permanent Council, which you probably hear a lot of, which is where we treat with all of the political issues, and the Development Council, which is the Inter-American Council for Integral Development, which is where we treat with the issues of development. And we like to say the real work happens in CD, right? Where we come in and really tackle the very complex issue of development. How do we do that? Policy dialogue. Policy dialogue is critical to our work. The OAS is an organization built for its members to engage, to discuss, to debate, and to set agendas for the region, to build consensus and set agendas for the region. So within the context of CD, we have 11 ministerial processes on each of the sectors that we work. So there's this policy dialogue, identifying the common challenges, identifying shared approach and a shared responsibility for addressing those challenges. And then the second arm is technical cooperation, development cooperation in all its modalities. Whether we're talking North-South cooperation, meaning cooperation between the more developed countries of our hemisphere, Canada, the US, etc., providing cooperation opportunities for all other member states, South-South cooperation, and as you probably have already heard, the Latin American and Caribbean region are global leaders in South-South cooperation. We pretty much have been teaching the world how South-South cooperation can and should occur within the context of the Latin American and Caribbean region. Or triangular cooperation, which is a lot of what the OAS engages in, or SETI does, the Secretariat for Integral Development does work on the issue of triangular cooperation, where we have a donor, we have the OAS in the center, and then we go on to countries, so that all three are part of the cooperation process. So all of the various modalities of cooperation, North-South, South-South, and triangular is what we engage in within the context of SETI, to translate that the mandates that we receive from the policy dialogue into action. And I will demonstrate a little bit more. So how do we see ourselves really and truly? And that's kind of an assessment as to what is it that we're doing concretely, and what we like to believe that we do, if we were to simply put it in a statement, is to drive institutional, human, and technical capacity in the Americas through multi-sectoral partnerships and cooperation for sustainable development. I always say, we're not a bank. We don't want to be a bank. Our role is not to be a funding agency. Our role is to be a cooperation entity where we are building relationships between and among member states to address their needs, between member states and other partners. We are like the facilitator or the honest broker. I like to say honest broker simply because there's nothing in it for us. The only thing that we want as an organization is to ensure that our people are thriving, that our people are developing, that our countries are working. So however and whoever we need to bring to the table to effect those partnerships and to make that cooperation happen, to secure the development of the region, is what we are about. Our fundamental roles: building institutional capacity, building human capacity, building technical capacity. Institutional capacity, I emphasize very strongly, because without strong institutions, none of the rest can follow through, or none of the rest can really thrive. Building resilience, we have adopted that as cross-cutting goals. We have to build environmental resilience, economic and resilience to environmental, economic and social shocks, right? As we know, our region is very much exposed to those external shocks, whether we are looking at fluctuation in commodity prices, or we are looking at disasters or other more recent climate-related shocks. All of this affects our region so very strongly. So building resilience is key, and driving competitiveness. We have to be competitive. We're lagging behind so many other regions in the world in terms of our competitiveness, that this has to be part of our development thrust. How do we do that? As I said, policy dialogue, understanding the common challenges through the ministerial processes, cooperation, knowledge sharing, not reinventing the wheel. It's one member state helping the other in the true spirit of cooperación solidaria. This has been an OAS coined term from time immemorial, ensuring that we are lifting each other together by sharing knowledge, sharing experiences, and not going back, whether it be mistakes or successes, learning from each other through that sharing. And I will demonstrate a little later how we do that. Partnerships, driving partnerships. We are more engaged now, more than ever, with the private sector and other partners, the development banks, etc., to fuel our work, because we inherently do not have those funding capabilities, but we know how to establish partnerships in order to do so. And the areas that we work, inclusive and competitive economies. So we have a Department of Economic Development that focuses on tourism, culture, small and medium-sized enterprises, science and technology and innovation, competitiveness, foreign trade information. This forms the area of economic development. Sustainable development, where we treat with the issues of energy and climate change. We are the Technical Secretariat for the Energy and Climate Partnership of the Americas, which was established in the summit of 2009 in Trinidad and Tobago by President Obama. We continue to do a lot of work focusing now on energy transition, if you will, to renewable energy and other alternative sources. Education, and then we treat with the issues of disaster risk and management. We treat with the issues of water, integrated water resources management, working in the transboundary water basins of the hemisphere, so the Plata, the Bravo, the Trifenio. We have had a presence in those just transboundary regions for over 50 years. So that is a solid comparative advantage of the OAS in that space. And where we also look at the issue of governance, right? Environmental governance and environmental law. Education and human development, you probably already know that the OAS has the largest scholarships program in this hemisphere. We average about 4,000 to 6,000 scholarships a year for studies in undergraduate and graduate level studies, professional development, and technical skills building. So we do that we've been doing that for over 60 years, I believe close to 70 years now that the OAS has been offering scholarships to our member states for our citizens for higher learning. We have the issue of education, where we treat with 3 issues: strengthening the teaching profession, building inclusive and quality education, and early childhood care. These are the 3 fundamental issues to address the gaps that we see in education. And then we have the education portal of the Americas, where we drive a lot of our online learning, moving into this digital space and making opportunities available to as many people as possible. And we have a focus on decent, dignified, and productive employment for all. Why? We have perhaps, again, one of the oldest ministerials is our Ministerial on Labor, the Inter-American Conference of Ministers of Labor, where we have been at the forefront in this region, working in this tripartite manner with the ILO, the OAS, COSATE and CEATAL, the employers and the workers, to ensure that we are meeting the employment and labor needs of the region. So just a little bit on how do we work. I have gone through and indicated the policy dialogue and the ministerial meetings. We have, as I said, ministerials on labor, education, sustainable development, cooperation, culture, tourism, ports, the Inter-American Committee on Ports. So we have those higher level dialogues where we identify regional trends and priorities, allow for the exchange of experiences, look at opportunities for cooperation. So member states coming together to determine how we are going to cooperate to effect change in the region. And then we set the agenda for the OAS. Our ministerials are negotiated processes. So everybody comes to the table with their own needs, their own priorities, their own mandates, their own development imperatives. And we try to build consensus around those common challenges by having a whole ministerial process, which I will share with you in the next slide. The outcomes are usually political declarations, but declarations are statements. declarations need to be accompanied with plans of action. So it's one thing to have a declaration and to agree and to commit to doing things, but each ministerial is underpinned with a plan of action that establishes the concrete steps to fulfill the priorities identified in the declaration. And that is important because so often we hear of these big declarations that are coming through, but we don't see the real manifestation or the practical application of those declarations. So I'm just going to go through, and we've just gotten this new approved ministerial model at the recently held General Assembly last week. We begin the process, it's a full circle, with technical discussions on the challenges, gaps that exist within the region. That includes consultation with the partners. So we bring to the table other development partners, the development banks, in some cases the private sector, to have a discussion so that we're clear on what the gaps are in the region at any given time during our ministerial processes, so that we're moving towards building consensus on concrete areas of need in the region. Then we have a steering committee that defines the theme for sectoral priorities for action, because again, we can't take everything that comes through, so we have to prioritize. We develop a white paper as the Secretariat. That white paper informs all member states on what has been agreed as the challenges, providing a situation analysis, a SWOT, if you will, on the situation as it is, the needs, the opportunities, the threats, etc., that member states are informed as to what it is that we're going to focus on. Then within the Council for Integral Development, which meets on a monthly basis, but within specific committees on policy, the Committee on Policy will then look at all the proposals and the projects coming from member states and other partners for joint actions. We present those to cooperation authorities because, again, we have to link the issue of cooperation with the ministerial mandates. That's how we effect our work. Cooperation is inextricably linked to the issue of the policy dialogue that we're having. So it's important to bring cooperation authorities to the table. Then we share those with partners. Again, we have to work in partnership with other entities. We do not believe in going at it alone. We share those with our partners so that they too can come in and be part of the development process. Present the agenda. We have a preparatory meeting that is based literally looking at the documents that we're going to be presenting and what is it that member states are committed to. And that's where real dialogue and discussion happens, because as you know, everybody has their own priorities, their issues that are politically sensitive for some, for example, migration. This is a sticking point for so many of our member states, so that language is discussed, developed, and consensus is built around those issues so that we're not offending anybody, essentially. That we are agreeing collectively as a region, as a hemisphere, on what the priorities are, how we want to approach them, and how do we frankly want to propose them to the world, right? How are we identifying within the region those issues and those priorities, that the challenges, the issues, and the priorities that we are establishing. We have the ministerial meeting usually hosted in one country. Out of the ministerial meetings, we get the mandates, we agree, member states come to the table with concrete offers of cooperation and how we are going to move forward. Then we have, as a secretariat, we develop a work plan with member states chairing various working groups so that there is leadership and ownership of the mandates on the part of member states and not just the secretariat. Then the secretariat implements. We take a results-based approach. What do I mean by that? For me, it is so important for us as a secretariat to focus on results. We can talk is cheap. We can discuss, we can dialogue, we can propose, but we have to measure at the end. are we making a difference, right? What are the concrete results of the actions that we're taking in our member states to effect change? I like to say our goal should always be, how are we affecting the average person on the street? Are they being impacted by our work, and how? And that is, to me, the ultimate measure of the impact of our work. If we can say we've changed a few lives in each of our countries by virtue of the training we may have offered to a small business, to a small entrepreneur to access markets through e-commerce and our programs there, or the scholarship that we've given to a member of a family that has not gone to college, but can go back and really work and support that community, or a community where they did not have electricity, as we did, for example, in Honduras a few years ago, where we put in an ethanol plant through one of our projects. So how are we changing people's lives is what this results-based approach is geared towards. We have to measure. So by the end of December, by mid-December, we will have our assessment meeting and our report, because we have to report back to each of the ministerial processes and to CD as to how it is that we're moving the needle in the region. So that issue of results-based management, monitoring, evaluation, and reporting results is critical. And so the cycle starts over again every 3 years, the cycle that I have presented on the work of the Secretariat is ongoing. So I'm just going to give you an example. We just had in September 2021 the meeting of the Inter-American Conference of the Ministers of Labor. I believe we had all member states represented, with 29 or 31 ministers, I believe, were at the table. With those ministers, we had the declaration and the plan of action of Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires, even if we did it virtually, Argentina was the chair, was the host of the ministerial, and this is what the ministerial was intended to address. And there are lots of issues that we have addressed. I've highlighted a few for you in terms of universal social protection. Member states have determined this is an area that we need to work on over the next 3 years. Addressing the different digital platforms, telework, working from home, ensuring that we have policies in place to look at those new issues, these emerging issues that have gained critical importance to us, particularly in the context of this pandemic. Better coordination between education and labor, that is important. We need the right skills, and we need to make sure education systems are in fact feeding into the right people into the labor force. And once that happens, right, and we agree on it, the Inter-American Network for Labor Administration, the REAL, is where we have the cooperation taking place between and among member states. It is funded by member states, and they're able to exchange experiences and good practices, again, as I said before, to lift the region up together. So partnerships for development, Cooperación Solidaria. In 1997, at the OAS General Assembly, member states determined that they needed to have a specialized agency for cooperation, where we could really focus our efforts on this issue of Cooperación Solidaria, and that gave birth to the Inter-American Agency for Cooperation and Development, which sits within the Secretariat for Integral Development. But again, that is bringing all the cooperation authorities together, overseeing the issue of cooperation within the context of the OAS, the Development Cooperation Fund, and others. So for cooperation, guiding principles, having a streamlined approach. For decision making, we have a 9-member board, because it's very difficult for decisions to be made by all 34, right? So we have a 9-member board of the Inter-American Agency for Cooperation and Development. We believe in reciprocity, so that there is the exchange between and among member states. We go by the mantra, no member state is too big or too small to give or receive cooperation. Everybody has something that they've shared. Everybody has a lesson that they've learned, good or bad, So that issue of reciprocity is fundamental to that work. Equitable exchange of experiences to scale, to ensure that we're scaling those experiences, right? That we're not imbalanced, that we're not importing something that doesn't fit within the local context, that we are responsive to emerging needs. We have to be. Things change so quickly in the region that we have to be nimble, we have to be agile, and we have to respond to the needs of member states as they arrive. To be innovative, participatory, and results-oriented. Cooperation and partnerships, again, our recognized partners, the permanent observers. The OAS has 70 permanent observer members from France to the UK to Japan and China and others who are part of the OAS observer membership. The private sector, and we have partnerships with Amazon, with Facebook, with IBM, with different partners who help us to effect our work. With civil society organizations, with the academic community, we have a huge partnership. Much of our work is being undertaken with the academic community, and I invite Universidad Católica, if you're not already a partner with us, we'd love to have an agreement signed with you to effect our work in the various sectors of SETI, with cooperation agencies and with other international organizations and development banks such as the CAF, the Caribbean Development Bank, CABE, the IDB. We have programs and projects with all of those entities in the implementation of our work. So cooperation in action, we have within the context of SETI, the Development Cooperation Fund. That is a voluntary fund where member states can present projects to be funded directly in the country on a national need or a regional need. It's a pay-to-play. You put in money, you can benefit from the fund. You do not put in, then you can't benefit or access the fund. We have CooperaNet, which is our platform for cooperation. It's meant to be dynamic. It's meant to have offers of cooperation matched with opportunities. Who's offering, who's, and how do you connect? Once you connect, we are prompted at the OAS, at the Secretariat, and then we can facilitate that engagement between the various partners and between the various entities to effect, to realize that cooperation activity. We have several networks. As I said, we have 11 ministerial processes, and much of our work is done through the networks, and funded, the implementation is done through the networks. So the Inter-American Labor Network on Labor Administration, the Inter-American Competitiveness Network, the Inter-American Teacher Education Network, where we do training specifically for teachers. Just last year, we reached 117,000 teachers within the context of the Inter-American Teacher Education Network. That is geared towards ensuring that teachers have the capacity to teach STEM education. Multi-sectoral partnerships. I say multi-sectoral because we're talking about academia, we're talking about the private sector, we're talking about the multilateral banks, we're talking about civil society, NGOs, foundations, and then we have the OAS scholarships and training program as part of how we effect cooperation. So we do bachelor's, master's, postgraduate, doctoral degrees in many of our member states and beyond. So we have students who are in the UK, we have students outside of the Americas, we have students in Macedonia, we have students in Serbia, China, lots of different places that students are undertaking studies within from the OAS Scholarship Fund, because our observer members also make scholarship opportunities available through the program at the OAS. How have we adjusted our work for COVID? I will go very quickly through this. As you know, COVID has forced us to address 3 emergencies at the same time. It's very much a health crisis, but we know the results. And I'm sure you've seen the numbers in terms of the economic decline in Latin America and the Caribbean, or in the hemisphere, I should say. I should not leave out there the bigger countries. They're very much a part of the challenges that COVID has posed for the region as well. And so it requires exceptional measures and a change in our focus in terms of public policies. We've quickly had to pivot into a different mode, if you will, in terms of effecting policies and programs to address the pandemic. It has offered unequivocal evidence, I like to say, that we are interconnected. For a long time, we talked about being this global community. The reality is we are dependent on each other. And you've seen what has happened in terms of global supply chains, right? And the demands, therefore, have increased for international cooperation and for multi-sectoral partnerships and for solidarity. So given that, what we did within the context of the Secretariat for Integral Development is we adopted a three-pronged approach last year once the pandemic hit and we went into remote work. We adjusted our portfolio of projects, of existing projects, so sitting with donors and reorienting projects to ensure that we could look at the needs as they arose within the context of COVID. So it meant changing our programs and projects in education. So for example, the Inter-American Teacher Education Network, we pivoted towards how do you teach STEM education during a pandemic, right? Because we could no longer go in and show teachers how to teach STEM in their classrooms. So we had to give them very practical hands-on tools in order for them to address it. Explore new projects that would quickly come on board. So it meant I was on the phone and with partners trying to figure out who can we bring to the table to help us address the emerging needs, and then outreach to other for new projects, and then continuing our outreach to other partners to bring them in on our efforts. Opportunities, though, I think there's a crisis, but there are also opportunities. We've seen a renewed focus on development. Suddenly we are front and center in the minds of member states because everybody's so concerned with emerging from this crisis, recovering from this crisis in a very tangible way, establishing new partnerships, helping member states in policy reforms. Again, that was at the heart of the discussion of the Ministerial of Labor, right? The new world of work and what that entails. So how do we help to develop those policies that can then impact member states and the work that they're going to do? And that comes with sharing experiences. That comes with, this is what this policy Uruguay has adopted, Chile has adopted. Can we share that so that another country can quickly develop their own policy to address the same problem? Documenting good practices. So we came up with a whole range portfolios of experiences, emerging technologies, for example, that were coming in throughout COVID. We're still doing that because that is important for member states to quickly learn and quickly adjust and adapt. And economic competitiveness, we think, is a strength. There are lots of other opportunities using online education platforms. Member states have had to migrate to online learning. Energy. We saw the need for energy and energy transition as a means for addressing sustainable growth and climate action at the same time. And we know what happened during the pandemic when everybody was staying home, right? And how the effect it had on the climate. But we focused a lot during that time, and we will continue to do that because there are cheaper ways of generating energy, particularly in the Caribbean, where the cost of energy is ridiculously high. How do we work in those spaces? Small businesses and leveraging private sector tools. We have a strong focus now on e-commerce. The pandemic presented small businesses with opportunities to sell their goods and services online. So we've been doing a lot of training, partnered with WhatsApp Business, Facebook's WhatsApp Business program, to quickly bring our micro enterprises into the e-commerce space, partnering with others so that we could quickly help our SMEs to digitize and to move into that e-commerce space. These are ongoing work and ongoing opportunities that we have. So I will conclude by saying this. We believe within the context of the OAS, development requires an integrated, all of government approach. So often what we see in our countries is a siloed approach where the issues of health are treated separately from the issues of education, separate from the issues of sustainable development, separate from the issues of labor and unemployment. What we want, or what we aspire to do, is to have an integrated and all of government approach which, as I said in the beginning, is very different from how development is treated within other agencies where they have siloed approach or specialized agencies. All of it comes together within the context of the Secretariat for Integral Development, so that we're looking at this integrally, that we're looking at this in an interconnected, interdependent way, rather than in silos. Engaging at the highest sectoral level, again, member states should drive their own economic development, their own socioeconomic development. We should not be in Washington developing programs and projects and mandates for any member state. So the idea of bringing member states together at the highest level to build consensus, to ensure that the region is moving forward together, and to emphasize and to work cooperatively and collaboratively is at the heart of what we do within the context of the OAS. And if I may say so myself, I think the OAS does cooperation very well. I think that we are very effective in what we do, not having lots of resources, but still being able to have very high impact through our cooperation. Multi-sectoral partnerships that are responsive to the needs. Partnerships for us have to be mutually beneficial. We're not going and approaching this simply from an altruistic perspective or simply from a corporate social responsibility perspective. The partners that we are seeking have to demonstrate that they have a vested interest in seeing the region grow, in seeing the region develop. So we're not creating this access for partners to simply get into our member states, but to work with us, to work alongside us and our member states in the socio-economic development of the region. And with that, I have a very short video that I would like to share with you that demonstrates concretely how SETI is effecting its work, particularly over the last year, so you can see our work and all that I have said in action. So with your indulgence, I will share the video. I don't think it's good. There we go.
Kim, surely you'll have to share another screen.
It's not working, right?
Screen. That may be the fault.
Okay, it was working before.
Maybe you can end presentation and
Okay.
share the other screen, the Chrome screen, or the one that you use.
Let's see. Let's see if I can share this on this. Okay, let's see.
Or maybe you can show me the link, and
yes, I'm going to try to do that.
The screen with the public.
Sorry. It's amazing how things never work when you need them. Okay, let's see.
That's technology. Don't.
Let's go down and see if I can now share. So, share screen.
Maybe you can share in the chat here the link.
Let's see if I can. Okay,
okay.
This should work now.
Yeah.
Kim, I think there's no sound. Is there supposed to be sound or not?
I'm sorry, Claudia, can you not hear?
No.
Oh, I can.
let me see, maybe in the microphone.
Can you hear now?
No. In the microphone, maybe you can touch the arrow and select the.
Can you hear now?
No. I think maybe if you enlarge the screen, you know, like then we, even without sound, you can read the subtitles out there.
I'm not sure why I could hear it.
One of those mysteries.
Federico, would you like me to share the link with you properly? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can try.
Let me I'm gonna share it in the chat. Okay, I've shared it with you.
That link seems that it does
It's not working.
work.
Okay, I apologize. It's there's a subtext if you would like to, if we proceed, there's a subtext that that exists with the link. Let's try again. I think it's internal. I think that's what happened. I'm trying again. Can you try this one? See if it works.
And authorization is required for me. I'm not.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's an internal link. I apologize.
Don't worry, it's technology.
I apologize.
Don't worry, Kim.
So I will stop there then, Federico, and take any questions that you may have. The video does have a subtext, so if anybody wants it, I'm happy to share afterwards. Thank you.
Okay. Kim, thank you very much for your presentation. Muchas gracias por tu presentación, Kim. Voy a hablar en español y en inglés. I'll talk in Spanish and in English. La encontré muy desafiante y muy interesante tu presentación. I found your presentation very illustrating. I have one question, if you may, and if you allow myself to a very detailed question. In a part of your presentation, you addressed the topic of the universal standards, the Declaration of Buenos Aires of this year, September of this year, no, Kim?
Correct.
La Declaración de Buenos Aires de este año, de septiembre. Tú hablaste de una suerte de estándares universales, ¿sí? Y creo que eso es un gran desafío que además fortalece el sistema interamericano. So it's a part of a big challenge that strengthens the inter-American system. And the question I want to address is what perspectives or challenges were discussed in this meeting in relation to one topic, the relating to the work in digital platforms, gig economy. One of the topics that it's comparative and very distributed in all our countries. Está presente en todos los países del mundo, naturalmente, y el sistema interamericano particularmente, y es muy actual ese tema. ¿Qué perspectivas, what challenges and perspectives did or were they discussed in that topic?
Sure. On the issue, you're speaking specifically to the digital platform and the virtual economy. So one of the two things I would say in terms of challenges, one is in terms of connectivity. We still do not have adequate connectivity within our region, particularly in terms of in our rural areas, right? So the issue of connectivity within the hemisphere is something that still needs to be addressed. You see the issue playing out even in the United States, right? With this new infrastructure bill, the idea is to ensure that people are connected for so many reasons, for education, for work, etc. And then the second one is participation in the virtual economy, and the fact that we are still lagging behind, either because we do not have the right skills in order for us to directly engage. So the issue of skilling and reskilling and upskilling is something that we have to address. And that is one of the reasons why member states took the decision to have the education ministers be part of the labor ministerial and vice versa. Because we have to get to a point where we are connecting education to the economy of our countries, right? So that issue of connecting the two, the skills that we need and the skills gap that exists so that we can be competitive was one of the challenges. The other one is the policy space. We do not have the policies in place in many of our member states to adequately allow us to actively participate in the virtual economy and the digital economy. And we're missing opportunities in that space. So, for example, member states have not yet addressed. If I am employed, if I live in Uruguay, but I'm taking a job in the US or in Canada, how am I taxed? How do I contribute to the tax revenue of my country? Because I am, in fact, an employee, right? And making sure that we have those policy frameworks in place, the regulatory frameworks in place that will treat with the issue of our participation in that virtual economy to allow us to really take advantage of the opportunities that exist. I had a discussion with one of our big partners, Amazon. And that's one of the challenges that they have. We still have very restrictive policies in our countries that does not really allow us to engage in e-commerce. How are we going to do so? How are taxes distributed? How do we treat with all of the issues of shipment, of moving goods and services between and across borders? So cross-border trade. These are some of the issues that emerge, and also, I should say, working across our countries. We don't have a uniform set of rules and regulations relating to that. So these were some of the challenges that they discussed. And what we hope is that in the work plan that we are developing now from the IACML, that this perhaps, I would say, Federico, was one of the most debated issue in the recently held labor ministerial post-COVID. The inadequacies, the opportunities that exist, the opportunities that we can take advantage of, but not having the right policies, not having skilled or trained our people, not having an education system that adequately supports that transition into that virtual space.
Thank you very much, Kim. Very interesting, that topic and the discussion involved in that topic. So thank you very much to answering my question. Claudia, si quieres, puedes tener ahora la palabra porque creo que no tenemos ninguna pregunta en el chat y tampoco he encontrado en YouTube. Así que Kim was very illustrating for all of us. Thank you very much.
Kim, so thank you again very much for your presentation. Muchas gracias. Muy interesante con esto. Me parece que, como tú decías, es la Es la parte, the least known part of the OAS, what we do, and I think one of the most important things. So I really enjoyed your presentation, also learning about, you know, how you visualize, or the focus that you give to the work that you do at SEDI. So very illustrating. So thank you very much for your help, for being here, for your support. And I don't know, maybe Luis Porto wants to say something. I see him here.
Just to thank Kim. She was excellent. She was brilliant. So that's why we don't have any question, I guess.
Oh wait, I see there's a question here. Oh, I'm sorry. There's one question.
There is?
Yeah. It says, how can we reduce the vulnerabilities in critical context in terms of access to technologies? Is that clear, Kim?
Yes, no, that is the elephant in the room for us in terms of vulnerabilities. Without saying too much, I will tell you that we are in discussion now with some major partners to look at this very critical issue of connectivity and not having that kind of access. We from a policy standpoint, as I said, we will continue to work in that space to help member states to formulate the right policies, but we need to translate them into action, right? And we need to recognize the inherent vulnerabilities that exist within the region, either because for so long we've been in the same mode in terms of our education systems and we've not transitioned, right? We've not moved quickly enough. We've not pivoted enough to recognize the new opportunities that are coming up. We have now, in next week, we've launched in Peru a program called Prospecta Americas. And Prospecta Americas is a foresight platform. And what we're doing there is focusing on the 10 transformative technologies so that member states can identify the trends, identify the opportunities that those technologies present for us as a region, identify the policy imperatives. So it's a partnership between industry, academia, the private sector, and member states to look at the research that is needed, or the trends that are emerging and the opportunities that are coming from artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, quantum computing, so that we can better understand as a region, how do we take advantage of these new emerging technologies? But yes, the issue of access continues to haunt us in the region, and Luis can probably speak a little bit to what we are trying to do in terms of developing a vulnerability index for our member states to better help us to identify our inherent vulnerabilities in the various contexts, social, economic, etc., in the region. But this is ongoing work. It has taken on greater urgency within the post-pandemic. Next week, in the first week of December, we will launch the Youth Academy on Transformative Technologies. It's to address that issue specifically. The Ministers of Science and Technology will gather on the 7th and 8th. We will launch the Youth Academy on Transformative Technologies. Again, that is a virtual space to do training, certification, not just training, but certification. I'll tell you now that we will be starting with augmented reality. We've partnered with Facebook. The Secretary General signed an agreement with Facebook last year. And under that agreement, we're now entering into a partnership on the metaverse, which you've heard Facebook talk about. And so our first training on augmented reality will begin in January until June. And we'll have the first cohort of young people being trained in augmented reality, being trained and certified in augmented reality. So we are moving towards looking at the skills for the future, looking at the future of work, and ensuring that we're building partnerships to move to another partnership that we will launch in the Science and Technology Ministerial is to look at the space economy.
And so we're working now with the Space Foundation to look at the space economy and what are the opportunities that are presented within the space economy, and how can member states actively participate in this massive economy that exists, either by being part of the supply chain or through research and R&D that can happen on the space economy within our universities, within our institutions of higher learning, and how do we partner with other regions around the world through those to ensure that we're training and certifying. Because the issue of credentials is important. It's not just a matter of training. Credentials that are internationally recognized is something, a major gap that we recognize is existing in the region. And so we need to move beyond just saying we did a training program, but really to provide our young people with the credentials that they need that is internationally recognized, so that they can effectively operate in the digital economy and take advantage of the opportunities that the new transformative technologies present.
Kim, and there's a follow-up question, and she's asking.
I think Luis was going to speak on the vulnerability.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Porque Kim me pidió que explicara un poco lo que estamos haciendo con el tema de vulnerabilidades. No hay una definición muy precisa de vulnerabilidades en la literatura sobre la vulnerabilidad de los países. Los indicadores multidimensionales que hemos encontrado son indicadores que dicen que esto es una vulnerabilidad, pero no tiene un fundamento estadístico ni una demostración estadística de que lo sea. Entonces tenemos dos tipos de enfoque. Hay un enfoque que habla de que son vulnerabilidades las que tienen, por ejemplo, los hogares, que hace que si pasa un shock externo, esas vulnerabilidades explican de por qué esos hogares caen por debajo de la línea de pobreza. Hay otro enfoque de vulnerabilidades que es que ante un shock externo, las vulnerabilidades son aquellas que reducen la probabilidad de que un país o un hogar o una empresa vuelva a los niveles anteriores en una determinada variable de desempeño. Nosotros estamos trabajando con esta segunda definición. Ya hemos hecho un análisis de la vulnerabilidad de las exportaciones durante la pandemia. Identificamos qué son vulnerabilidades y qué no dentro de la literatura sobre la base de un análisis de las exportaciones. Y ahora estamos trabajando por lo menos en dos indicadores, en el Producto Bruto y en vulnerabilidades vinculadas al turismo en el Caribe. Pero vamos a tratar de también incorporar otros elementos como pobreza, ingresos, etc. Lo que nos está dando hasta ahora con respecto al producto, pero tómenlo con pinzas porque el trabajo no está terminado, es que lo que explica las vulnerabilidades de los países, es decir, lo que reduce la probabilidad de que un país se recupere en términos de producto luego que sufre un shock, hasta ahora, pero no están terminados los trabajos, así que tómenlos con pinzas, son el capital humano, el capital social y la capacidad de innovación.
Uh-huh.
Esos son los tres elementos por los cuales efectivamente trabajar en temas de capacidades tecnológicas con los más vulnerables mejoraría por lo menos dos de esos elementos. Mejoraría capital humano y mejoraría capacidad de innovación para el próximo shock. Es decir, que serían políticas para reducir las vulnerabilidades. Eso con respecto a la pregunta, es todo esto para fundamentar de que la pregunta está muy bien formulada y que efectivamente la capacitación en habilidades tecnológicas a los más vulnerables es particularmente importante según los trabajos que hemos hecho hasta el momento. Sobre esa base, como Kim ya explicó, SEDI tiene muchos programas de cooperación que incorporan la capacitación y las prácticas de las poblaciones tecnológicas a través del exchange, del ACE Exchange, a través de los centros de desarrollo de pequeñas y medianas empresas. Son programas que tienen Pero también la OEA tiene asociaciones con con otras instituciones, como por ejemplo con fundaciones, que hacen también ese tipo de cosas. Por ejemplo, el Trust of Americas tiene un programa de capacitación a los más vulnerables en habilidades tecnológicas, que se llama el Proyecto Poeta, el programa Poeta, que es un programa que desarrolla el Trust, que es una fundación en la cual participa la OEA. Ese tipo de herramientas, la fundación las ha desarrollado casi que en forma piloto, las está expandiendo, y quizás nosotros en la organización tengamos que mirar con más detalle los resultados que están teniendo para tratar de incorporarlo dentro de la Secretaría de Desarrollo como un programa para ampliar a todos los países miembros, tomando en cuenta que desde el punto de vista estadístico nos está diciendo que esos elementos de vulnerabilidades importan, y desde el punto de vista práctico ya tenemos algunos pilotos que están dando resultados. Es algo que podríamos conversar, Kim, después en algún momento de incorporar en la discusión con los países, a ver si podemos amplificar lo que se está haciendo.
So I'm sorry that we didn't get to see the video, which has more information on our programs. I deliberately did not go into programs because we captured it in the video so well, and I apologize that you didn't get to see that. Another program that we have within the context of SETI is the Hub on the Commercialization and Transfer of Technology. And that hub allows us to work directly with aspiring entrepreneurs and in a university setting or a tech setting. The idea is to take your idea to market, so that if you are a budding entrepreneur, regardless of where you're from, we work with a combination of industry partners. We work with academia, top academic institutions, and some of our observer member states like Israel and Germany. We have the CAF as a partner working on the patenting aspect of it. And the idea is we can, over a period of 2 weeks, you bring the young people, the entrepreneurs together. I shouldn't say young because some of them are not so young, but you have an idea that you want to take to market. They will work with you, and they will tell you, well, this idea has already been done. So if you look at one of our partners of HP, for example, they'll say, look, this has already been done. Probably you can switch and change it into something else. Or probably there's commonality among a group of people in the room, and we come up with one technology that can address a need. And the way we look at innovation is, what are the everyday challenges that we're facing, and how do we develop a solution to those challenges through technology? That hub has now, in the Caribbean setting, it has become just a hub in general for small businesses, for those who have ideas and they want to take it to market in general, not just technology. We've just signed an agreement with the University of California at Riverside, where we've established a mentorship community, so that when we finish with the 2 weeks, the mentoring has continued. So we have this group of mentors that are partners with us who continue to work with the young people until they can take their idea to market and commercialize it. So these are just some of the ideas. And as Luis mentioned, we have the Americas Competitiveness Exchange, where we take leaders from all countries, to particularly women. We have a special emphasis on women, to take them to innovation hubs around the world. So we've done some of our countries. We've had in Chile, Canada, Argentina, Mexico. We have lots of iterations in the US. It's a partnership with the US Department of Commerce, the US Department of State, and the OAS. And we've taken the program was hosted in Israel and Germany to understand their innovation ecosystem and to develop partnerships, particularly between academic institutions for R&D, because we're lacking in research and development. So we've been able to connect partners in Israel and Germany, with partners with entities in Brazil that are doing research, whether it is on biotech and other areas, and that has proven to be very successful. So again, and I want to encourage, and I say this shamelessly, Luis, to encourage Universidad Católica to become a partner with us on so many of our programs. So Federico, we look forward to a discussion. I never miss an opportunity. So we'd love to have you on board, either participating in the hub, participating in Prospecta, perhaps coming on board on our youth academy, because as I said, everything we do is done through partnerships that we establish.
Wow, great. That was Soraya started this amazing conversation. So thank you very much. I think just to be fair, she also asked a question about if there's a policy for adapting technologies that look to introduce new technologies, but I think that was answered by you, right?
Yes, that's Prospecta, and I invite Soraya to join the Youth Academy or to look forward to the launch. We'll be working through the OAS office in Uruguay to disseminate the information on the launch of the Youth Academy, and we'll be blitzing through social media. So look at the social media, particularly that of the Secretary General, who's our biggest spokesperson. He'll be blasting that when it comes out, and we want to have, our goal is 10,000 young people in the region by 2024, so that we have an ambitious goal, but we think we can meet it. We have another program that's coming on with IBM and their certification there. So there are lots of partnerships that we're cultivating with the idea of offering a myriad of opportunities for our people in the region. And we really want to partner with those in the academic sector to help us to reach as many people as possible.
Oh, wonderful. That's really great.
Muchas gracias, Kim.
Si me permite,
sí, claro, Luis.
Federico, voy a seguir en la línea que plantó Kim sobre la posibilidad de explorar posibilidades de mayor creación que la Universidad Católica. El Centro de Competitividad, el Instituto de Competitividad de la Universidad Católica, tenemos un acuerdo con ellos y forma parte de la red interamericana de competitividad. Participa año a año en el Instituto de Competitividad de la Universidad Católica, por lo que se hace con ellos, Federico, que tendríamos que explorar, que ya tenemos un acuerdo, que conocen SEDI, conocen lo que hacemos en materia de competitividad. Podríamos explorar la posibilidad de trabajar con el instituto también en temas de tecnología y de capacitación en temas de tecnología.
Sí, and Federico to consider hosting a center of excellence. So we have 10 centers of excellence that we're launching under Prospecta. We have one in Mexico has committed, Peru has committed, Colombia has committed. I don't remember the university there, but if you can take up, if Universidad Católica can take up one of the 10 transformative technologies, either AI, blockchain, I believe Mexico has taken. So there are others, quantum computing, and a lot of them are available. You could be one of the centers of excellence.
Wow.
I love the initiative. Me encanta la iniciativa, tanto de Luis como de Kim, both. I'll take notes and I'll fight for it.
Fantastic. I will you do that. Luis knows better. Don't promise me things that you're not going to keep. So I'm going to keep asking Federico. Don't worry.
Muchísimas gracias, Kim y Luis, ambos. Ha sido una tarde magistral. A mí me gustó muchísimo la participación. Aproveché mucho también la conversación y la presentación de Kim. Y creo que el público también. Seguramente, además va a quedar grabado esto en YouTube para todos quienes no pudieron seguirlo en vivo, van a tener la posibilidad de seguirlo en forma asincrónica después, más adelante. Y también agradecer que concluiremos mañana, porque fue un ciclo muy interesante y seguramente seguirá siendo muy interesante mañana ya con Mari Carmen Plata, la secretaria de Acceso a Derechos y Equidad, que va a hablar con todos nosotros sobre el acceso a derechos con equidad. Simplemente volver a anunciar esa esa instancia última de mañana. No sé si podremos tener al final la participación del secretario general por temas de agenda, pero ojalá que así sea, sin hacer promesas, pero bueno.
En eso estamos.
En eso estamos. Les agradezco nuevamente y damos cierre, si les parece, a la actividad de hoy y nos reencontramos mañana.
Thank you so much. Claudia, I can send you the video link so you can share with participants if you'd like.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay,
Thank you.
fantastic.
Thank you.
Ciao, Luis.
Okay,
Enjoy.
bye.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.